All right, so there's a couple high level concepts for this new feature, the daily, if you will, the daily view. One is the log, or we might actually call it notebook. There's we don't know what we're going to call it, but a daily press release type concept, scheduling and planning, and then the current type stand-up-y things that we have in the current view. So those are the high level concepts. The first one, we've been calling it the log for a while now, but I think we're going to call it the notebook, the team's notebook, and then later the personal notebook. Versus a log, because log has a connotation too that it's maybe kind of boring and it has some overloaded things too. But it really is a log. Like if you've been on a boat, or if you're a pilot, you have a pilot's log or a ship's log of everything that's gone on, and you can always reference it. Like the next shift that comes in to work on a boat can look and go, oh, okay, this is what happened in the last 12 hours or whatever. So those are high level kind of concepts in how we talk about it. And that's how we came up with the word log. But the idea here is kind of like in between a Notion doc, like the Notion app here I'm using, and kind of in between that and a curated activity feed that we have already. So it's like in between both of those. It's free form. You can add things to it. You can add context. You can have conversations. But it's structured too, to where you can bring in things like a PR or an issue, and we'll unfurl it and it'll look a certain way, structured. You can drag it to the top or the bottom of your log or your notebook and that kind of thing. So that's kind of I know it's a little abstract, but that's kind of how we're thinking about it from that perspective. And a lot of us already do this today, believe it or not. We have markdown files. I think, Jeff, you use VS Code and you have a markdown file or something, or a text file. A lot of us do today where we have a log of things that need to be done, or, oh, I need to talk to somebody about this, or there's some context that needs to be given. And so this would be a way to put that in there, but also with all of our entities, all of our objects and things like PRs and issues and stuff like that, we can add to it. Later on in the future, we want to have a personal log too. So that someone who's on multiple teams or multiple companies, one day on their profile, they can have a log, but that's down the road. And I'll show you some of the sketches here too, just to kind of talk through it. So there's maybe a little more concrete visual for you. But then also when you come to the notebook, the team notebook, at the beginning of the day, we'll do a couple of things for you. Hey, do you want to add this to your notebook? And it'll be like important PRs that are still open, waiting to be reviewed, or a blocker. And the goal there is to try to create that kind of morning habit, kind of like a stand-up does, where oh yeah, this has to be done. Oh, we do need to talk about this, and we'll kind of suggest, hey, these things need to be added to your notebook, and you can add them. You'll be able to see things like who's on PTO. So that day or that week or whatever, that, oh yeah, Evan's gone. He's taken his migration to Pittsburgh or something. So that kind of thing. And then another important concept is asking questions. So you get to your team notebook and it asks you, hey, are you blocked today? Are you still waiting for this? What's next up for you? So we'll ask you some kind of those stand-up-y kind of questions that get added to the log or the notebook, so that people can get context. Again, it's kind of back to that company heuristic of how do I know what's going on, or if I want to opt in and know what Team Bolt is doing, I'd love to go to their team notebook and go, oh, okay, so that's what it means when I saw that issue being closed and this PR being merged, and that kind of thing. Okay, so that's the first concept. I can show some sketches here in a minute. Does that make sense? Any questions on that before I go to the next one?
How much of the log, maybe there's a little bit of a design implementation question, but how much of is it Notion versus like structured versus like a Jupyter notebook style? How are you guys thinking about it?
I kind of feel like without triggering the data science guys, it's kind of like a Jupyter notebook kind of thing. It's structured, like there's these blocks and you can add a text block or a code block or an image block, or drag over an issue or a PR from the activity feed or something. but it's not so freeform like a Google Doc, that just
Right.
anything and everything. So there's blocks where you can add things, edit things, comment on things. But it's also not so structured like its activity feed, where you can't do anything with it.
Right.
That's kind of how I'm picturing it anyway.
Cool.
Because if we did the like Matt did a couple prototypes on it already, and there's the timeline, like activity view of it, and then the log starts feeling really noisy and chattery, and honestly like the current stand-up view, where it's like, what do I do with these 30 PRs? And not all of them really need to be there on your day view, for what I'm looking at right now today.
But as an example, I sent like our team, we did like we do like a Notion document, and we use like check boxes, and we kind of group check boxes on like what different people are working on different parts of our stand up, is a better way to like organize like how we're thinking about, the work we have to do and kind of who's working on what, and just a better organization of the data. Would you be able to do something like that in it?
Yeah, I think we want to do that. And I think our concept of that is action items in our product right now. And so I think we would want to let you create those kind of action items. They show up in your day view. Even if you're on a retro and you create the action items, then they should show up on your day view too. And then when you roll into your next day, again, back to those like kind of seeding the notebook, asking you questions and stuff, that can be something, hey, this wasn't done from yesterday. Would you like to roll this over to today?
So the one thing that's a little unique about, kind of the way we organize it, a little different than just a traditional action item list, is that what we try to group things logically. Like this is going to be in Jira, this is going to be the GitLab thing, and this is the, because that's kind of how mentally our mental model is right now, is like grouping things not by person, but by kind of like entity of like kind of progress of what we're working on across the whole sprint. And we, a flat like list of 20 actions with people's names would be not super helpful in that scenario. Like it is helpful in a lot of scenarios, but like an ability to sort of say like, here's a grouping.
So you want to
to-do list.
You just want to like I'm just going to do it in Notion here. You just want to be like
slash
Jira,
slash
or whatever.
Just hit slash and just hit slash and then select checkbox right there. Just do boom slash right there and just do checkbox to-do list right there.
Yeah, right. And then,
and then
right. Exactly.
And that's exactly how we did it. We went through all the major components that we're working on for Agent 4. And then what was an additional pain in the ass is I had to go into Jira and then go find the Jiras for each one of those. Because at the end of the day, they were basically a Jira task with some commentary around it. Ideally, what I'd like to be able to do is drag, create a to-do list or a checkbox, drag, a set of issues over, or maybe even create them in line, like create an issue in line, and then group them however I want. Yeah, exactly.
Or you can like hashtag app123 and then boom, it just drops it in there. Yeah.
And drops it in there. And then I can kind of organize it how I want to organize it, but it's still it's still kind of hard entities or like named entities, right? They're not they're not so free form that, we don't know what they are, but then I can add free form commentary around that entity, right? To provide the context about what we're, not just, hey, here's a Jira, but like, hey, we need to do this Jira after we do this other Jira or something like that. That won't necessarily be so structured that you put it in Jira. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it does. And I definitely think we want to allow teams to do that, because it needs to be freeform enough to allow you to make those decisions. Like some teams, they might want to organize their notebook where it's like, hey, in convention wise, we're going to stick at the top of every day these things, and they should have the freedom to do that.
Right.
And then I guess along the same lines as the entities that you're talking about, those would be like live cards, right? So if you had an issue entity or PR entity, those would update automatically in the daily view, so that if somebody adds a comment or they close it out, change the priority, all that would update live, and it wouldn't just be a stagnant aspect, right?
Right. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, we had talked about like making like snapshotting it, so it's like the state of the ticket at the time that the day happened, at the day closed. But I don't. First of all, I don't even know how we would do that without like a time machine type idea. But then second of all, I don't know if that's useful. Like it's probably more useful to go back a day and to see what's going on, what happened yesterday, and then seeing, oh, okay, this is closed right now, versus like, oh, it was open at the time that, the day
Yeah,
ended
to
or
me, that's the
something.
power. Exactly that. If I go back a week from now and I see all the things that we did, and then I'm kind of seeing that, like the live state, this PR never got merged, even though we were trying to merge it a week ago, for whatever reason, like I mean, I definitely could see the use case for the snapshot, but like but like you said, I think the power is almost the inverse. It's more powerful to actually see kind of what it is right now.
Right.
Well, and I think to that point, maybe it's bringing in the concept of the result, right? So the daily is about actions you're trying to get done, and then what was the end result, and then looking at that at the end of the day, and then at the end of the iteration, right?
Ooh, that's a perfect segue, Bert, into the next concept.